Stage is yours. Thank you.
Well, it's great being back at MIT. The good thing speaking at your own lab is you can just kind of pretend you're at the office. So I'm going to do something a little different today. I had a presentation ready to go, and then Matthew Prince, one of the best technologists in America, did almost my same conversation points. And so thanks to the kindness of the conference organizers, this is just going to be a conversation in response to the challenge that Matthew put before this community, which is, what's this new business model of the internet? And importantly, what is the technology required to build it? So quickly, let's talk about the old internet. Every time I think about the old internet, or actually what I'll call the modern internet that started around 1995, Matthew didn't get into this, but he's been a critical part of this growth over the last year, which is called solving the original sin of the internet. As Mark Andreessen was wrapping up his work on Mosaic at Illinois, and Tim Berners-Lee was popularizing the World Wide Web out of CERN and later MIT, both of them tried diligently to get the world financial system onboarded to the web. And universally, from Visa to MasterCard to Federal Reserve to banks, said, absolutely not. And so since about the mid-90s, we've actually had two internets. We've had an internet of open data, open communication, and then we've had an internet of money. That internet of money largely runs from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And that internet of data, because it was not able to be monetized, smart technologists, and I think more importantly, smart business people, had to learn to figure out a new incentive. And that incentive was advertising. The modern internet's business is ad sales. And the outcome of an ad sales-based business is building technologies that makes you look at ads, that drives the chemicals in your bodies to do one more click, one more swipe, one more scroll. So much so that when Facebook built News Feed in 2008, they spent considerable time in Las Vegas studying under the psychologists who build one-armed bandits. There's no technical reason why the bottom of your News Feed or your Twitter feed should bounce, but they bounce because psychologists who work for Wynn and Trump in Vegas told them that that bounce at the bottom of a one-armed bandit spikes dopamine. And that spike of dopamine makes you want to do some more. And so the outcome of the modern internet is spending more time on our screens, not necessarily using the technology that it's built to do, such as solving problems. Or at MIT, we call it solving the hard problem. So as you see, these are the advertising revenues of Meta and Google over the last 20 years. But you will see over the last 15 years, advertising revenue as a percentage of total revenue, at least as Google has gone down. Meta just effectively remains a dopamine company. But Google is starting to diversify. Google Cloud is becoming one of the world's most performant cloud architectures. We're a client of them, and we thoroughly enjoy their technology. But if you look at the capital expenditure, since 2015, they actually didn't spend much of their advertising revenue on CapEx. Advertising revenue just fed the beast. But you start seeing, with the result of Transformers paper and the push by OpenAI, is CapEx is starting to outpace ad revenue. There needs to be a new business model for these companies. So another person who's speaking of this, who's pretty close to the action, is Kevin Scott, who's a CTO of Microsoft. And in a speech this May, he put it plainly. I don't know whether the deal of the old web is up, but it's time for us to start thinking of a new deal. And I like the idea of new deal, right? We need a new deal off dopamine. We need a new deal off advertising. But the problem is, and this is what we call the Cloudflare quandary, how do we build that new deal? So we have new protocols, APA, Ramesh talked about them at length, but this one we find most interesting. So the 402 original sin that Mark Andreessen spoke about, that Matthew Prince is supporting, their open protocol is called X402. That start of the spike is about a month ago. And you're seeing massive increases in use of 402 protocols to start allowing internet activity to have authorization to spend. And what you're also seeing, the partnerships here are not only firms like Anthropic, but also firms like Circle, right? You're starting to see autonomous agents spend real dollars. And this is happening right now. This is all within the last quarter. And this is the stuff that we've been working on here at MIT and in our company Radius for the past 6 years. So this is the big thing here. If I want you to remember one thing, it's this, is the overwhelming quantity of the world's goods and services are not currently monetizable. If you think of the goods and services needed for this new economy and this new internet, you think of things like data, compute, and inference. That single data could be a single oncology screen or a single bit of research coming from this laboratory, a single data point. Each one of those data points is actually a goods and service. And right now, because of the cost of moving value, the overwhelming majority of the world's goods and services are not monetizable. This is the one thing to remember. This is the new deal. This is the new internet, is a monetization of these goods and services that, due to the cost of value data transfer, are not monetizable. Now, this is going to be hard for you to see, but the former head of crypto at Fidelity and current venture capitalist Nick Carter put this research together, and it's payment networks by how much the average spend is. And you see two fun gaps here. On the far right, you see inter-commercial bank, inter-central bank reactions. That's transactions over $50 million. You see a huge gap to the left. That huge gap to the left goes all the way to 100,000. For anyone in this room who's tried to buy a house or pay tuition, there's really no easy way to pay tuition or put a down payment on a house. Oftentimes, you're still looking at a check. There's really no clean digital use there. But the one most important for this new internet, most important for our research at MIT and our company that we spun out 2 years ago, is the very far left. It is almost impossible to digitally pay for anything under $1. And the overwhelming amount of goods and services in the world cost less than $1. Over the modern internet, we've been doing that via ad sales, just bundling in ad sales. And Matt Honan writes a world-changing article, and we bundle some ad sales, and hopefully Matt gets some of that over at BuzzFeed or now Tech Review. But is that an optimal way to do it? Why shouldn't, if Matt writes a great article, the market determines that that article, if it's world-changing, should be 25 cents, $1, maybe $20. Certainly as a former Federal Reserve officer, any article by Nick Timiraos of the Wall Street Journal, I would spend $10 an article just to make sure that I read Nick Timiraos' article on time. There is no market for things that are unmonetizable until now. And this is our solution to the Cloudflare quandary, and I'm so excited Matthew Prince brought this. How do we move money at a cost low enough to monetize the world's largest glut of non-monetizable goods? And how do we move it fast enough to keep up with Cloudflare? So remember, Matthew talked about Cloudflare's volumes, right? So publicly, Cloudflare says they do 76 million transactions per second. Matthew said it's more like 200. So let's use a 200 number because he probably knows his own business. So if you look at the forms of money transfer that would have to take on 1 second of Cloudflare's volume. So Wire, that would be $5 billion a second. I'm pretty sure Wire can't do it. ACH is about 100 million per second. That's out. Visa, 70 million a second. That's out. Ethereum, great public blockchain, great technology. That's 3 billion a second, even if you don't factor in congestion. So that's out. Base, which is Coinbase's world-class L2 on Ethereum that is partnering with Cloudflare, that $1.4 million per second. I'm pretty sure that's out too. And then Solana, which is and these are all the theoretical top numbers, not the actual numbers. These are the numbers that have been tested in labs. Solana that tops out theoretically at 65,000 transactions a second is 240K. That's pretty good. And the bottom one is the one we're working on. That is our theoretical number that we've tested in our labs. That starts looking like a solution to the Cloudflare problem. But the problem is you're seeing those top three, they're all blockchains. And there is a false dichotomy that stablecoins must run on blockchains. Stablecoins are just smart contracts. So can you get the important things of blockchains, such as dual spending preventions and consensus controls, without all that cost and all that time? And that's what we've been working on since about 2019 here at MIT and later our spin-out Radius. So this is how we think about it. As opposed to having a massive global state of blockchains, you separate it in agents and you partition those agents into a state layer. The good thing here is, like TCP/IP, which drove the growth of the modern internet, we have yet to find upper limits of scalability here. Every addition of compute, every addition of an agent, every addition of a shard, every addition of a partition not only makes the system faster, but it makes it relatively less expensive. So to the keynote speaker at this conference, Matthew Prince at Cloudflare, we think we've cracked it. We'd love to work with you, and we'd love to work with those in the room interested in these problems. Thank you all.